Alrighty, and just like that, we're on.
Okay, amazing.
So I'm sitting here at Diamond Women.
Yes.
And I'm here with Jennifer Gurry, and I was just asking about like where the surname or the background of the surname Gurry comes from, and you started telling me the story about well, it's basically your what is it?
Great something.
Great
Lots
something.
of the greats.
We're on the first fleet.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's a bit on my mum's side. I believe my one of my great grandmas was either a governess that married a captain, or she was a convict that married a captain. That's all we kind of know. We're running with governess. And on my husband's side, his family was on the Cirrus, which is the 7th boat in the First Fleet.
Wow.
But it's just a bit crazy that out of all the men in the world, I married one that had a similar heritage to mine, like, which is pretty rare in Australia. There's so much diversity. My dad's Irish. He was a 10-pound pom. So that moved here. So his parents were, Irish that moved to England during the famine and whatever, and then migrated over here.
For £10, yeah.
Yeah, for £10. Isn't that crazy?
It's an unbelievable story. I actually did a podcast with a gentleman named Michael Lyons, and was it he? No, it might have been his parents were £10 poms. But Michael's actually passed away. But it was nice to be able to share like some of those stories. And he was his big thing. He was talking about this concept of moral injury.
Oh wow.
And it might actually tie into some of our discussion. So I'll go down this little segue here. But basically, he was talking about it in the context of like people that had come back from war, right? And he gave a specific example about the siege of Jadotville, which is these Irish soldiers had gone to war, and I think there was like 150 of them or 300 of them or whatever the number was, and they held off and basically survived a siege. Which was like 11 days long or something like that, against like 11,000 troops. And the fact that they managed to like broker a ceasefire and they didn't lose a single life was like absolutely unbelievable, right? You couldn't believe it. Unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
But what happened is, so these guys originally were hailed as war heroes, but then for whatever reason, and I'm probably butchering the story here, but there's actually a Netflix documentary about it. When they went back to Ireland or whatever, the UN had said something like, oh, no, there was some sort of contention around what had happened. And they basically said, no, you guys are cowards. You guys actually surrendered. And that's why nobody died. And so of the like 150 soldiers, like majority of them actually committed suicide because they were originally held as war heroes. And then when the UN had made some whatever decision, suddenly they're cowards. And it was just like this.
After seeing the horrors that they saw.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing.
Right? And so Michael was really big on talking about this concept of moral injury in the sense of like when we see PTSD in people, that's typically a symptom, right? Like the symptom is the fact that they're getting the flashbacks and the trauma and all this sort of stuff. But he sort of has this idea that, it's not even his idea, but it's one of the ideas that he talks about is that a lot of the times you have this thing that's gone against your moral fiber, and like that's the actual injury, and the symptoms that you see are because of that moral injury.
Yeah.
And this happens to a lot of people, when perhaps they go through something in life that they had to make a tough decision.
Yeah.
And it eats away at them. And, because they still think about these decisions and it keeps wearing away at them, like perhaps the symptom comes out as stress or something else.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't, think about it until we just started talking about it. But I thought that's actually a pretty good sort of idea that we can sort of rehash on later on in the conversation.
Yeah, because I think I've not actually heard the concept of moral injury. I don't know, but I propose maybe the teaching around moral injury is moved forward now, and now we have things like self-care and self-awareness, because I think moral injury can be impacted in any line of work, well, particularly in the field that we work in. A lot of our counsellors would say that they would come close to have experienced moral injury, but I think there's another medical term that they use, but they have things in place to prevent that becoming a post-traumatic, like supervision and clinical and professional supervision, as well as, self-care and grounding techniques and reflection and boundaries and all the things that protect them so that they can do work that could provide that moral injury without those things in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess to sort of allow people to understand what it is that you guys do, I think we should probably leave there.
Sure.
Like normally I like to lull people into the conversation, so I'll like pull it all the way back and then have you share your story before we get there. But we've already touched on it. And I figured this time we'll go straight for the meat and bones.
Yeah, great.
So what is it that you do here at Diamond Women?
So we are an organisation that provides that safe space for women to nut out all their options around their unplanned or unexpected pregnancy. So for us, we want to make sure that they are empowered with the right information, that there isn't coercion, and that they really understand the supports available to them. So hopefully they make a life-affirming decision and choose to continue their pregnancy. But we also do a lot of post-abortion counselling. So women that have chosen to terminate their pregnancy at any point and are navigating a lot of emotions they never anticipated and how that sits with them. And that's where, there's a lot of, moral, what was the word?
Moral injury, yeah.
Moral injury, yeah.
Yeah, we've gone pretty heavy straight away. So
straight away,
bear with us, people.
Like, and I mean, like it can be heavy, but it's actually when a woman is truly empowered and informed. Like, and empowered means that she's given all the information to make the decision for herself. It means that there's no one coercing her at all. It means that there's no one making any financial benefit. There's no conflict of interest around giving her the information and supporting her to make that decision. She can absorb the information, process, align it with her values, find a way, like we hope, point to the way forward, demonstrate that there is hope in this picture, that a pregnancy isn't a problem, it's a pregnancy that just has problems around it that we can help her navigate. That she can go, okay, great. Well, I know who I identify as, I know what my values are, and I'm going to make a decision in line with that, regardless of all the other loud voices that are coming at her. That's an empowered woman. And so the cool thing is when you see a woman that's fully empowered, fully supported, she makes really epic choices and can turn out to be like the most stunning, beautiful story you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now pull it back.
Yep.
And I want to go into your story.
Yep.
So then we'll tie this back into Diamond Women Australia. Towards the end of it, right? So, where did you grow up first of all?
So I grew up in a suburb called Galston, so northwest of Sydney. So about 20 minutes from our office here, 30 minutes, I don't know. Really small, outer Sydney suburb, 3 kilometres. Semi-rural. 3 kilometres further, there was no running water, so water had to be shipped in. Just a nuclear family, mum and dad, one sister. Dad worked and then started his own business when I was 16 or something. And mum was a stay-at-home mum, went to the local primary school, then dad sent me to the Catholic girls' school. I loved it. My sister needed some boys, so left in year 10 and went to the local boys' school that had started taking in girls for years 11 and 12. Then went on to uni, did business. I think the entrepreneurial gene came through me and from my dad. And then, it was a very standard upbringing. Yeah. Like we had meat and 3 veg for dinner, cereal for breakfast, sandwich for lunch. Was very average.
Any fond memories that spring to mind straight away when I talk about your childhood kind of a thing?
Look, my dad's always been the adventure king, and so he was busy Monday to Friday, but weekends was always usually activities and teaching games and stuff like that. We weren't sporty, so we weren't really into any sports, but holidays were always a highlight for us. So we're the holiday family.
Yeah. Would you guys road trip? What would you do? Caravanning?
We would road trip, lots of caravanning back in, the 80s. Yep, up to the Central Coast and down south. And that became a thing so much that we loved it that in his later years he bought a holiday house there, so we still holidayed. And then when I was 17, 18, his business started doing well, and so he took us to Disneyland. So, which I think every parent should do.
That's a nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it came to schooling, what kind of a kid were you?
I was remarkably average. Yeah. I think I am the most consistently average person you could ever come across. I wasn't the cool kid, the pretty kid, the smart kid. I wasn't even the sporty kid. I was just average.
Did you fly under the radar a bit?
Yeah, I did. And I wasn't, that didn't bother me a whole lot. I think all I needed was a good couple of friends that made me laugh and I was fine to go. And then by high school, I made 2 good friends. One was much smarter than me and one was about the same, but we became a bit competitive. But the 3 of us just decided, well, because of the super smart one, we both wanted to lift our game. So it kind of encouraged us to work a bit harder. But yeah, I was still the most average out of the 3 of them. And I mean, like, I never had like a big group of girlfriends. Or in a group, I was friends with everyone. So that continued through into my 20s when I got involved in a local youth group and became a youth leader. I don't have a group of friends. I just have lots of friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never really found that.
Yeah.
Yep.
You were a bit of a floater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I liked everybody, but not everybody for all the time.
Or different groups for different things, right?
Yeah,
Like it
and
depended on
just what are you doing? No, I don't want to do that. That's boring. What are you doing? I'll do that. Yeah.
So when you what do you remember what subjects you did towards the end of high school?
Yeah, I did. I don't know what it's called now. I did like the middle to slightly above average maths and the above slightly average English.
Mm-hmm.
And then biology, home ec, because I thought I was going to start a bakery at some point in my life.
Wow.
And biology, I understood. I don't know. I think my mum's a nurse and she was like really into like vitamins and health. So that helped with that subject. And religion, and that's maybe social studies. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about this bakery sort of hobby interest.
Okay, you know how like every, 8-year-old with their cousin who's a bit older, they think that, we're such good bakers and we're going to start a bakery and we're going to make so much money. Yeah, it didn't happen. And she still bakes and her baking is still so bad.
Oh.
But I love her. I tell her every Christmas, I'm like, let it go.
I don't need these gingerbread cookies anymore.
They taste like bricks. Yeah. So then I, didn't think I'd get into uni, quite frankly. Like I just didn't know if my grades would cut it because I would get to exams and just freak out and my anxiety would skits and I would walk out of the exam and know all the answers but sitting down, just couldn't calm down enough. So I wasn't sure. So I started business college because that was a thing then. And then a few months into that, I found out I did get into uni.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So wait, you started before you actually found out whether you went to uni?
Because I was like, probably won't. Who knows, Yeah. And, like I thought, okay, well, I can work my way to wherever I want to go if I don't get into uni. But, I found out I got into uni and started at Western Sydney doing business and management. And then I lent naturally more towards marketing, but because of my friends were doing it, I thought I'd do something different and did HR. Mm-hmm. That was stupid. So it turned out to do like nearly a double degree in HR and marketing because I was just better naturally at one, but chose a different line because I wanted to be different and because I thought I was good with people, which is not what HR is about.
No.
It's about policies,
follow the bouncing ball kind of.
And it's about, in those days, it was very much about unions and all those kind of things and rights, and that was not what I was signing up for. Yeah. So finished uni and then got jobs in marketing. Was my natural default, and like for whatever reason, I'd be there for 6 months and I'd either get bored or get made redundant.
Oh wow. Yeah,
and so I think the longest I lasted in a job was like a year or something. And then I was offered a job at a Glory Jean's cafe through the head office, and I managed that because I thought, that goes back to my bakery idea. Maybe I can do this because I was like telling my dad, there's good money in cafes. I should open one. And then while I was there, one of my friends had started Bible college, and I was like, that's stupid because you're really smart and you can do anything. So... And then he goes, no, I really felt like it was something I needed to invest in for my future. And I was like, if he needs to do it, I probably need to do it. Didn't hurt that he was quite cute. Anyway, and so I spoke to my youth pastor about it on the Wednesday and she goes, yeah, I think it would be good. And I signed up and started on the Friday.
So, okay, We got to unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you started doing marketing for all these different
Yep.
types of companies, are there any funny ones funny businesses that you had to do marketing for?
Or
or
no,
something
I
out
just
of,
landed like I think my beautiful boomer parents never really said, "What do you want to do? This is what you're good at. I encourage you to go for something." It was more like, get a job, these are your skills, just apply for anything. And so I kept ending up in the car industry.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And I'm like,
that was my career, 17 years.
oh, really?
Yeah. So,
I'm like Kia Motors, like
Yeah.
Auto Pro, all these car industries. And I'm like, by the end of it, I was so done.
yeah.
And so towards the latter part of my career, it went a bit zigzag around relationships. But I was like, no, I love skincare and I love travel. So it was either Qantas, and I ended up working for a Japanese skincare company in
Wow.
Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just needed to work in something that had good side perks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things that you could use. Yeah. Skincare products.
Yeah. I'm like,
or
I don't
flights.
care for a car. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it gave me a really good background. And then in the throes of that, after doing Bible college, I was offered a job for a large, like a national-based Christian youth outreach program.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the accountant and event planner for that. And I did that for I think 3 years, but it does not pay good. But I should go back a step. So while I was at Bible college, that guy that I'd signed up for, he just travelled to Paris or for France for a Christian concert, and he'd come back and goes, Jen, while I was there, you wouldn't believe this, but they legalised abortion up till birth. And I was like, no way, don't be ridiculous, that's impossible. Anyway, I started Googling, but I can't read French, so I couldn't come across much, but I was telling my dad, and he said, if that is true, I will back you whatever it is to help fight this. And so I'd then come across, while I was working there, a girl had given me a brochure about this woman that had owned 2 abortion clinics in the US, and she would go and speak in schools and say, look, if you want to go and have sex, everyone's doing it, aren't they? So make people feel awkward if they weren't. She said, can't talk to your parents about it. So if they wanted to discuss it with the parents, she'd made that feel awkward.
Wow.
And she's like, and this is the form of contraception you should take, and recommended the lowest form of contraception, and then gave out her business card as well. So she had this, but then like a few years later, she'd had a radical encounter with Jesus Christ, got saved, and God said to her, I want you to sell everything that you made with blood money. So she sold her Mercedes, her mansion and everything, and she'd opened up 2,000 pregnancy centers across the US. I was like, who is this woman? Like, wow, that's crazy. So I was telling my dad about her, and he goes, all right, I'll pay for your ticket to go meet her. So my best friend was living in Louisiana, and I flew over there, and we did a 5-hour road trip to meet this woman, and I was in awe. And she said, let me hook you up. I'm going to train you in my pregnancy centers. I'll take you around.
How do you even establish the relationship with her? Like, did you just
I
reach out via
hello,
email? Or?
I like what you did. I'd like to meet you about starting a pregnancy center. I'm thinking maybe we should have more in Australia. Yep. And then she's like that. And that was what shocked me as well. Because a lot of, working in corporate, trying to reach the boss of anybody, of any organization's like, yeah, nice try. Here's the receptionist. But she's like, no, come on in, and laid out her homemade pumpkin scones, showed me her business plan, training manuals, goes, Jenny, this is what you need. Yep, you need to do this and you need to do this, and yep. And I was like, oh my word. And then introduced me to a lot of the directors of pregnancy centers that she had around the state that took me in, and because I had some time because I was between jobs because I kept getting bored. They would allow me to sit in counselling appointments and go through their training manuals and ask questions, and I was like, this is beautiful. It was this really tranquil, peaceful feeling as soon as you walked in. You could tell the women really cared. They would roll out every single stop to reach women and provide them with whatever they needed. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like this, and definitely not in Australia. And if I was 16 and pregnant, this is where I'd want to come. And then, my marketing background came in handy then, because I started doing research about what did exist in Australia, and I just saw a massive gap. So, and I also was researching the statistics, the number of women that terminate their pregnancy in Australia and across the world. And I was like, oh, this is really huge numbers. God, you should do something about this. And I kind of felt that little prompt, like, why not you? And I figured, oh, well, don't have a marriage, don't have a mortgage. If it goes belly up, I could go get another job. And gave it a shot. And so it started with a standalone, you know, those websites that are just one page,
Yep.
and a mobile phone, and I just waited for it to call.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Sorry, a lot there.
There's a lot to sort of go through there. I'm still spinning out about that story from that lady's perspective. Like, to have abortion clinics and then go like basically 180 the other way. Something dramatic obviously has happened in her life for her, right?
Yeah.
Are you able to say her name?
Yeah, Carol Everett. Yeah,
Carol
from the Heidi Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you, I guess, you know, when somebody has had a big 180 like that, like when you spoke to her, could you feel like some of those things really weighed heavily on her conscience, or had she already let it go?
She had let it go. She was like forgiven, set free, and she was like empowered and so passionate about making a difference and reversing anything that made away, like that told lies to women about what abortion actually does. She was like, no, I want them to know the truth. Yeah.
And then like obviously the statistics have probably changed since back then. But do you know off the top of your head what are the statistics?
Oh, it's
like
much
nowadays?
worse now.
Worse?
Worse, significantly worse.
So we're talking millions?
Yes, I got a phone call from a donor yesterday who I don't know his numbers and I don't know his research, so I haven't done my own yet. But apparently worldwide now there are more abortions every year than there are natural deaths.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people, they don't like being called babies. But
yeah, a lot of human beings, Homo sapiens. Yeah, a lot of people that have, you know, not had the chance to walk the earth because of, you know, various factors. And so, as opposed to people naturally dying of natural causes. Yeah.
Even, and I know this because I listened to something else that you had been on, even in your own story, right? Like your parents, you came along, and do you want to share the story?
Oh, it was kind of funny. I don't know if my parents think so anyway. But I was 16 and I really needed my birth certificate to be able to get my driver's license. And I asked my dad for ages, and I don't know whether he was busy or there was just this hesitancy. Eventually he kind of just threw it at me and closed my bedroom door. And I'm looking at it, I'm doing the maths, and I'm like, hang on, they got married in December, but I was born in May. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not adding up. And I'm like, shut up, bastard. I found out. Anyway, I didn't really say anything to them for a while anyway. I was going for a walk with my mum and something came up and she goes, I know you know.
So she
And she goes, you were the best mistake and the worst mistake that I ever made. And I have no regrets and it's amazing. But, you know, like it was the hardest time at the same time. And so I was like, no way. So I joke that I'm like Russian by conception, but like Australian by birth because they were 70s backpackers, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was conceived in the Ukraine, I think.
Wow. Of all places, right?
Right.
It's like traveling the world,
I know.
globetrotting.
Yeah.
And here you come along,
backpackers.
look, better go back to Australia.
Yeah, that's right. So they hurried home and came back with not much except me on the way. Yeah.
All right. And then, sorry, I just wanted to cover off that story.
No, that's fine.
Speaking to your time, you know, when you in the States, right, when you were like seeing all these different centers and meeting all these directors and other women and obviously also meeting the women who were coming in, right? Are there any sort of impactful moments or impactful stories that you really that stand out for you?
Like there's a couple. Like I remember they have. I mean, like it's America, so there's one. They have free speech. So in a counselling room like this, like they can talk about faith, they can talk about anything. Whereas we've got a lot more legislation around our counsellors and what we can say and not say. And they also have a lot more maternity and adoption homes because adoption doesn't have the kind of the dirty image that it does in Australia. And so there's actually like there's these beautiful homes where girls can go and stay like during summer break or whatever, meet with other girls, like, you know, process the last part of their pregnancy and really begin to talk to counsellors about adoption being an option. And then there's folders where they can look through and think about okay, who's going to raise my child? What sort of parents do I want for them? And they can literally pick out parents that are, you know, one might be African American, one could be, you know, Hispanic, or one could be Caucasian, that play volleyball, that like going to the beach, and that have an elder sibling for their baby. Like, and you can be that specific and find parents that you want to raise your children. And it's actually, and then it's open. So it's not like they just hand over their baby and that's it, but they create like a model of care where they can agree to see the baby 3 times a year, birthday or Christmas. They get report cards, photos, all those things, and the birth mum stays involved. And it's really special. And I heard this one story of this one girl that decided she was in this home and she was really particular about the type of parents she wanted. But unbeknownst to her, her grandparents were in a Bible study with another couple that were really trying to have a child and struggling, and they didn't know, and they said, look, I don't know. Someone they knew, there was a middle person that said there's a really good maternity home or adoption centre that you can put your name down, no guarantees. So they went, all right, we'll do that. This young girl that's in there knew none of this, and she ended up choosing them as the adoptive parents of her baby.
Wow.
But it turns out that her parents and grandparents are good friends with like the adoptive parents. And so they all have these beautiful, massive Christmases and get-togethers and things. And it was just like, not like, it can't be a coincidence, but it was just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And everyone wins in that situation, you know, like the adoptive families get to raise a beautiful child as their own and love it unconditionally. They haven't gone through, you know, what is quite an invasive process with IVF. The birth mum gets to see her child be raised and loved and still gets relationship with it, but gets to, you know, continue their education or whatever it was that the baby posed as an obstacle to. And the grandparents get it all, you know. So it's actually very cool.
Yeah. In Australia, like we don't really have any like orphanages or those sorts of things.
No, orphanages, I think an outdated term. We have foster care and then we have long-term foster care, so short and long-term foster care.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
orphanage indicates there's a building or an institution where there's a whole bunch of kids go. Yeah. So now they usually try and place them in families for short to medium or long-term care.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like in terms of like the options in Australia, like how easy or difficult is that process?
For adoption?
Yeah. Like so for a mother who, as an example, wants to offer her child up for adoption.
For the mother to offer her up, the process isn't that hard.
Okay.
We've had 3 girls in 19 years choose adoption as the option that they want to go through, and all 3 got to the birth stage and changed their mind.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, you know, a lot of psychologists and evidence shows is actually beneficial for mother and child to stay together anyway, which is fine. Yeah. But we have a very unhealthy view of adoption in Australia, and so it has impacted a lot of women's views on choosing that as an option when faced with an unplanned pregnancy. Yeah.
Well, when you say that, so what do you mean by that? Like, what are the sort of negative stigmas around adoption?
Well, if you have to look at our history as Australians, so we had the stolen generation with our Indigenous community. Then we had in the 1950s, you know, the Catholic sisters that would put the sheet in front of the mum and then take the baby as it was birthed. And so it's become that is a horrible option rather than a woman willingly, lovingly choosing to place her baby in another family to be raised, which is different to like, I gave my baby up for adoption. You know, it's a whole language matters. So, but in Australia, if you talk adoption, it's like, I remember years ago, we did a Facebook group for International Adoption Day, World Adoption Day. And I did a little chocolate, like a little brown fist punching a little white fist. And I had 110 hate comments on our Facebook post after that. I was like, what? They're like, what are you doing standing at the end of the bed waiting to steal a baby from a mother? I'm like, do they not know what we do?
Yeah,
like, what? The misconception of what's actually involved in adoption is really tragic, and it's impacted. Like, we've had clients say to us when we go, can we talk to you about all your options, like the 3, parenting, adoption and termination? And they're like, oh, I could never place my baby up for adoption. That's so selfish.
Yeah.
Like, okay, and how is it different to termination?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, I would have seen its face. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, like, because, yeah, like I guess when I think about the termination option, like I just think, ugh, like
Yeah.
it just makes me shudder.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm fortunate that, you know, I've got, you know, my kids and I love them very much. And like, to me, fatherhood was like one of the biggest blessings in the world. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people are probably like, Johnny, shut up. Like, you know,
Yeah.
not everybody wants to be a dad. I'm like, yeah, cool. You don't, like, not everybody has to be a parent.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
True.
saying that everybody has to be a parent.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that for me personally, it's been one of the greatest joys of my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think there is a culture of self, and being a dad is very selfless. You know, like your sleep may get interrupted. Your finances aren't entirely all your own to spend at will. You know, you've got budgets to align, you know, and that's a culture that we're trying to navigate with as well. You know, the culture of like, it's me first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also about actions and consequences.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like on the pro-choice side of things, it's kind of like everybody's trying to shirk a responsibility. Like, this is just my interpretation of it, right? So send all the hate you want at me, but this is just how I sort of view it, right?
Yeah.
It's so, as an example, from the male perspective, it's like, oh, you know, well, I don't want any part of this, so I wash my hands of it, dust my hands off, and like, it's your problem, right? So that's an issue straight away, because I guess, you know, for me, and it's kind of funny, like, when you think about like how in today's world, like there's kind of like this anti masculinity movement against men, which is kind of like, oh, you know, you're too much of an alpha male, you're toxic male, it's deemed toxic masculinity. But if it's toxic masculinity to be accountable for my actions, I choose to be the toxic male every single day of the week, because at least I'm accountable for what I'm doing, rather than being a weak. I'm sorry if there's weak men out there, but yeah, like if you want to. I use the terminology with Dr. Emma. I said, if you do the crime, you got to do the time, right? So if you're happy to partake in the activity with a willing person, and there's a consequence, well, you should be happy to be willing in the consequence as well, right?
I agree, but unfortunately, everything has been set up against women and for men, from birth control, fertility, responsibilities. The weight of everything falls solely on the women. Even from contraception to fertility to contraception, it's all on the woman.
So let's go through those things, because I think it's kind of like interesting when you actually recount, you know, this sort, because it's almost hidden in the sort of, you know, pro women rights movement. You know, like that there are these things that they're saying, we're pro women, this is all for women, and blah 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 blah. But then, if you actually take a moment to think about it, it doesn't really seem like it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think we took a minute to think about it. And I think, you know, it was about women's freedom, but what it did was allowed men to take advantage of women and walk away scot-free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't as empowering as I think they thought it was going to be. Yeah. And it just, you know, contraception, it's always the woman's responsibility, you know, and if it fails, it was the woman's responsibility. And then the woman has to carry the weight of that responsibility, you know, whether she terminates, whether she carries to term, whether she places a baby up for adoption, that weight is on her. And the men, again, get away scot-free. And then if the man does take off and does take absolutely no responsibility, where he's given a false name or she didn't know his name, when she gives birth, if she doesn't put his name on the birth certificate, she's impacted financially because her Centrelink payments are curbed as a result of not having his name on the birth certificate.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So, yeah. It's, men, there's no real impact on all these laws for men.
Yeah. It's you know, I always, when it comes to like policy making and government and things like that, I often think about, and people are like, well, you know, Johnny, why do you let these things live in your head? But I often think about these things because I think it's interesting when you look at society in general, right? Like, so as an example, childcare subsidy, right? So you get a payment from the government to basically put your child into childcare so that you as a mother can go back to work, where they just take your tax dollars anyway to pay you back your childcare subsidy.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but yep, that makes sense. Yep.
Right? And so like the whole idea behind it is because if you have 50% of the population not working, well, that's a lot of tax revenue that you're not getting. So rather than, if the goal was to incentivize people to have children, you'd give them the money irrespective of whether it's for childcare or not.
Yeah.
Because perhaps it could just be to ease cost of living. Perhaps
Yep.
it could be you can use that for groceries. Perhaps they want to do other activities with their child, right? But basically the way that you only get the money if you put them into childcare. And by putting them into childcare, well, then they can enforce a few other things that they perhaps want to do. But then, essentially if the mother wants to work, or she goes, okay, well, I'm going to put my kid into childcare and then I'm going to pay my taxes. And a lot of the times, like your tax revenue just goes back into fee. You're getting it back.
It's an interesting thought. Yeah.
With strings attached.
Yeah.
Right. And I like, the idea behind it might have been a positive one. Oh, we're trying to support mums so that they don't necessarily have to stay at home. And I think at the end of the day, it's a woman's choice to decide, does she want to go back to the workforce or not? But like the fact that we only incentivize the choice where you go back to the workforce, as opposed to giving you the incentive to, if they wanted to incentivize people giving birth at the end of the day, you'd give it irrespective and let them choose, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's an interesting policy decision, just like the one that we just spoke about with just before. Like to me, that is to not provide or to curb payments just because they can't provide the right name, right?
Yeah.
It's almost counterintuitive.
Yeah. And I think, the government is hoping that then the women will, grab the man's name and put it on it, and then they can reclaim some of the costs that they have to accrue to him by skimming his pay packet and having him be financially responsible for the mother and child.
Yeah.
So it's interesting times we are in, but so we, regardless of all that, we want women to understand what's all that's involved and know that information before they make choices. Because with DV being on the rise, sometimes they don't want to put the father's name on the birth certificate and have him involved in their life for the next 18 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, I didn't think about that. So, domestic violence could definitely be a reason why a woman may not.
And you can have ensure that your Medicare or your Centrelink isn't curbed with his name on it, but you have to have a police report, which is a whole different level again. Yeah.
Yeah. So then for you, in terms of like this whole thing starting here in Australia, like what was, so you mentioned before that obviously, you basically started with a one-page website, a mobile phone, waiting for the phone to ring. What sort of happened from there?
The phone rang. I was like, oh my gosh.
Somebody's ringing.
Yeah. And it was, and so the goal was just to meet with a woman, and we didn't have office space or anything, so we'd meet at a cafe or something and just kind of unpack what was going on for them. Like, what is it that's making a pregnancy so terrifying for you? Is it parents, finances, homelessness, education, migration status, the relationship? What is it that we need to unpack and figure a way around? Because the problems are peripheral to the pregnancy, but if we can figure out those, then the pregnancy is not a problem. Like if it's financial, I'm like, well, what if you won lotto tomorrow? Would this pregnancy be a problem? Like if I said to you, I want you to have another 5 kids, you're like, oh, my budget. But if I said I'm going to give you $1 million every year for those 5 kids, would it be a problem?
No.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
So that's the thing. So often the pregnancy and the people or the babies aren't the issue. It's the finances. So if we can work around the finances, whether it's as little as us providing 12 months baby goods and material assistance, which we do, or connecting the husband or the male in the relationship to a financial planner to help him work out that he can have that extra child without it impacting his financial goals, and a way around that. Easy.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what are the sort of main problems? Is it generally just money that people are worried about?
It used to be. Now it's just unplanned.
Okay.
So that 2019 abortion law reform that passed that allowed for abortion for any reason up till birth in New South Wales had a massive normative effect on society, which made abortion in the minds of women seem normal, healthy, legal and safe. And it is none of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of misconception, at least from your perspective, like when you talk to these young women around what the process of termination involves?
So a lot of them don't know, or they know that there's an abortion pill available, and there is a slight misunderstanding that they think they can take the pill and be pregnant, then unpregnant. And that's why there's a lot of trauma after that procedure, because you need to know exactly how far along you are in your gestation to know that it's safe to take that pill. Often they don't know when they're ovulated, don't know when they conceived. And so it can often be a lot more dramatic than they anticipated.
So is that a failure in terms of like our school education system to actually educate people effectively on?
Well, that's a whole different question. Is it the education system's responsibility to educate on what the abortion pill does to a woman's body and what she may or may not see?
Huh.
Or is that a church's role to educate about abortion? Is it a parent's role?
Yeah,
Like,
I take the pragmatic. So I'm sorry to jump in on you, but I'm going to take the pragmatic role of saying that me as a dad, like that's part of what I want to be able to explain to my kids.
Exactly, and I think it should always be with the parents.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of parents don't know. A lot of people don't know what's available out there, and they have teenagers and they don't know what they're reading, seeing, and facing, and so that's, again, a little bit of our job is to educate them when they come in seeing us that this is what it is and this is how it can impact you emotionally, physically, psychologically, and with your fertility, because, you know, there's no shortcuts, and we don't, as women, we don't see our fertility. It's hidden inside our womb. So we don't know the damage that we're doing by all these things. So, but having a little bit of an understanding, then they can make an informed and empowered choice. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so the moment I mentioned the school thing, I was straight away like backpedaling. Yeah,
Look,
no, not the school's problem. Let me deal with it as a dad.
Look, you know, I would actually just be happy if the schools got back to teaching maths, English and science.
Yeah, that's all gone a little bit haywire as well.
Just teach that. I just need my kid to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions I definitely had coming into this was like, how does an organization like this stay afloat? Like, how do you guys survive
5
financially?
fishes, 7 loaves. So we have a really, really tight budget, and so we just make things work. Like, we double dip in things. If we have a budget for, say, one particular role in that organization, she will probably do 2 or 3 different jobs. Yeah, like I still vacuum. So, you know, we don't pay for cleaners. We do things in-house. But we do to keep us going and to keep growth, and that's what we want to do. Like, our numbers aren't going down. We want to keep growing. We want to keep meeting more and more women that, you know, are facing this and looking for a pathway forward. And so we do our end of financial year campaign. We do a corporate golf day in September, and then we do Christmas wrapping at Westfield shopping centres in December.
Yeah.
And we just ask for people to sign up and join what's called the Village, which is just a community of people that are passionate about donating $5 a month to be part of a village that actually is the village to the women that come through our doors. And that's really significant, because people think, oh, I can't give enough, or, you know, the cost of living's insane. I'm like, literally, because we run so tight, $5 a month can be a game changer. Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Yeah. And it obviously has a significant impact on the ladies that come through the door, right?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And like, fun story, one of our clients from 9 years ago rang me at the end of last year, and we just catch up every couple of years for coffee, and she's like, oh, you won't believe it, my sister's pregnant, but she hasn't told anyone yet because she's not sure what she's going to do. I'm like, dude, do you know who you're talking to? And she's like, oh my gosh. And she goes, I'll FaceTime her now. So we called while we were at the cafe, and I'm like, let's do coffee next week. And we caught up and had a coffee, and we just nutted out some of the biggest fears.
Yeah.
And anyway, I went and met with her yesterday and met her little 6-week-old baby boy.
Oh, that's nice.
So nice.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and then I took a photo of my first client's little girl, who's now 9, holding her cousin who's 6 weeks old. I was like, pretty special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm sure there's a lot of those kinds of stories throughout the year. Right?
Yeah, they're the good ones. Sometimes it's hard, that, what did you call it, moral injury? When you get girls in there, like, there's not a lot of reasons why they can't continue their pregnancy, and yet they make a decision to terminate, like around twins and things like that. That actually feels really hard. And then they come back for counselling because all the things that we tried to inform them and say, you should be mindful that this could be an after effect, have come into fruition. And that's, it's really
I think that's something that's probably not really talked about as much. Like I think I mentioned to you beforehand that one of the things that Ange, my wife, was assisting with in the parish was so we could do a service for mothers who had miscarried or had terminations and things like that. Because I think the fact that like when it goes a lot of the times when it's going on with a lady, like if it's somebody in your workplace or something like that, you wouldn't even know because chances are if they have miscarried, they probably weren't even showing, and so they're just carrying on like everything's normal day to day, and they might have just gone through this thing that's quite traumatic.
Yep.
And they still have to turn up to work every day.
Yep.
Try and keep a straight face. Try and just show up and be present.
I've had 5. Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wow. Can you talk us through that?
Yep, I can. Excuse me as I clear my voice. It is exactly as you say, because it is inherently personal and it's your physiology is the one that's going through it, no one else. You don't share the pain. And it's not a broken arm. It's not on display. So you just carry on. But personally, like I have a faith, so that sustained me through it. I have a supportive husband, and I also have a gorgeous little boy. And I also don't believe it's the end. Like I believe I will see those children one day and whatever else. But at the same time, and everybody's grief is different. Like I've had, and I miscarried quite early in my pregnancies. I've had girls that miscarried that have worked for us at like 21 weeks and 19 weeks. And I can't even imagine, because you actually have to birth your baby that's not breathing and say goodbye. But we just don't talk about it. I think there's a lot in women's health we don't talk about it. It's probably like my little side passion, non-hustle yet. Yeah. Because, around PMS and women that suffer with endometriosis, PCOS, menopause, all sorts of things that impacts like their day-to-day. And yet we don't talk about it. And so they come into work and they've just got to chin up, keep doing your job, without... I ran it through, no, not me. It was on Instagram. I saw a woman ran it through ChatGPT. What would the world look like if men got periods and had children? It was hilarious. Like there were laws. There was like weeks off every month. Special financial benefits for childbearing with 12 months paid maternity leave. It was quite hilarious. And I was like, yeah, it would probably be a bit different. But I'm like, I don't hate the system. It just is what it is. But I think there should be more awareness around it, so that not that women need it. There should be no excuses for poor behaviour, but to create a little bit more empathy in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, that part of grieving it, especially, when you miscarried and you really wanted that child, like there's a lot of attachment there.
Yeah.
And from a male perspective, like it's a difficult one for us to understand. Like I remember with my first child, Cadence, before she was born, like I only really started to get like super excited maybe like the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Because it's not, we're not the ones going through all the changes. Like, like when you feel the baby kick and that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, that's really cool. But like, I know for my wife, like she was the one going through all the changes. So she's feeling these things every day. Her hormones are like skyrocketing and all that sort of stuff that goes with it. So the connection that she's going to share with them is obviously very different to the connection that I'm going to have with them. But like that, when it was real, like, I had so much emotion just burst out of me that, you didn't think that was in there, and it just comes out like in this very primal kind of moment, right? And for anyone who hasn't been in a delivery suite, it's like, it's like a war zone. In terms
It
of
is. It is. Yep. I still remember my husband's face. Yep.
he didn't pass out or anything, did
No, he before the week before I gave birth, I went into labour, but nothing to no effect. But on the way, he made me stop so he could get drive-through Macca's. So because he said he needed the sustenance. For
Did he vomit it?
No, he was fine. But I'm like, I can't believe I'm in pain and we're stopping for your sustenance. Yeah, yeah, I know. He kind of hangs his head on that one a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but it is, and I guess, I think slowly there's growing louder voices around women's health. I heard recently the government only spends 10% of the whole health budget on women's things, considering we're 50% of the population.
Yeah.
It's a bit crazy.
Oh, look, I think there's a lot of things that the government wastes money on.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Yeah.
So, but here it's like it's special, when we get three real key different types of women, like the post-abortive we've talked about, and women that are unsure about their options, but we also get women that just need support. So they're going to continue their pregnancy. They come in around 16 or 18 weeks. They've got no family, friends, may have been kicked out by partners or parents, and they just need someone to cheer them on. And that's where we step up and we really excel at and become their greatest village surrounding them and their new bub.
Wow. So in those examples, like if they don't have a place to stay in, that sort of thing, like what's the sort of protocol? What do you guys try and do?
Housing's is probably the biggest challenge that we have for our clients. There's like an 18-month waiting queue, even if you have children.
Wow.
Yeah. And so often it's where like local community members from churches will step up and offer a room or a granny flat or something and find a way for some of our clients. Or they end up couch surfing until baby's born and then someone opens a door for them. Yeah.
It's quite interesting because you brought up, that it's somebody from the church-based community. For as much flack that faith cops nowadays in today's society, right? Like there's so much net good that faith
so
does.
much.
Like, yes, there are bad actors, but there are bad actors in almost any enterprise, any business, any opportunity, right? Whether you can say that, whether it's about the church, okay, people, there are definitely, pedophiles or bad actors that have been in the church.
Yeah.
But, you look at the government, there's no difference.
Yeah.
Right? You look in any workplace, there are always people that are going to be caught for the wrong thing. And all these skeletons come out of the closet. We just saw it in the entertainment industry in Hollywood. We've seen it in the Royal Palace. Like there's all of these different things, right?
Yeah.
So, like the fact is that bad actors are going to exist everywhere. But I think the fact that a lot of the faith-based organizations, or whether it's a church, whether it's any sort of religion that preaches net good, generally has services or offers services that are quite positive for the community and help people.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to sort of segue into your faith journey.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think it's always interesting to see, why you think the things that you do. And so did you grow up as a Christian or?
Grew up as a Catholic.
Yep.
So Dad he was great. He's a good Irish Catholic man, and we'd go to Mass every Sunday morning. And then I got to around 17 or 16, 17, and I was not loving it. And
what was it about it at that age?
A lot of things, really, but the biggest one was the hypocrisy for me amongst my age group. So I had one guy that would see prostitutes on Saturday night and be in Mass on Sunday, and I'm like, I can't. And I bear in mind I'd not been to any other church and I wasn't aware that was everywhere, but I was just like, I can't deal with that. And then I just felt like the message that I was hearing from the minister wasn't connecting with where I was at. And so I'd connected with a friend that I went to primary school, and she goes, oh, you should come to church with me. And that was a big Pentecostal church. Well, it wasn't big, it was a small Pentecostal church. And I'll never forget, I walked in, the first message, I can still tell you, was on decision making. I was like, stop it. And I just felt this sense like welcome home, like that was where I needed to land. And so and all it did was reinforce a lot of the stuff that I'd been taught and raised in the Catholic Church, and a lot of the fundamentals were different. The way they worshipped was different. The way the message and the service was different, but the faith was the same. They believed in Jesus, and it resonated a lot more with me. So I got invested there and became a youth leader, and that's where I was getting girls going, oh, there's a girl in my Bible study that's pregnant, and or a girl from my school, and why are you telling me? And it just seemed to keep magnetizing towards me. And then my education background. So then that was when I got back from America, and I was like, after that first trip, and I'm thinking, God, I don't know if this is really what you want me to do. And then next thing, I'm in the plane at LA airport, and I get a text message from a girl in my Bible study. Hey, there's a girl at work I want to introduce to you. She's pregnant. She's thinking of having an abortion. And that was it.
So, so all of these people were texting you whenever their friends would get pregnant.
Yeah. I was like, why me? Yeah. I know. I remember one girl sitting in my car sobbing her eyes up for 3 hours because she'd terminated her pregnancy on the weekend. I was like, I don't even know how to navigate this.
Yeah.
Like, I just know Jesus forgives. I know that he can heal your heart, and that's all I have to offer you.
Yeah.
Yep. And he did. And she ended up marrying the man and having 4 more children.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I want to segue on this, and then we'll come back to the faith thing. But when somebody's going through, like, okay, I'm just thinking about this from a workplace perspective, right? Like, so oftentimes we wouldn't even know that somebody's gone through something like that. But if we are aware that somebody's gone through something, what is the best way to approach it, or how? Like, are there any suggestions or advice?
Always put your own judgment or your own values, what you think is right or wrong, in the back seat. Just ask, how are you doing? How are you honestly doing? Because, one of our counselors told me here, you can be 2 things simultaneously at once. Like, I can be excited that I won $1 million, but also feel enormous nervousness of how that's going to navigate and how am I going to carry the weight of that. Or I can be excited that I'm going on holidays, but also nervous about what I'm going to, how I'm going to navigate jet lag. So you can be 2 things or more than 2 things simultaneously. So for someone that's been through that, they might feel, or they might think they should feel relieved, but actually be very knee-deep in regret or confused. Why am I so sad? I should be relieved. I chose this. This is what I wanted. So you just want to ask, and they can't unpack that yet. So you just want to go, how are you doing? And if they're like, okay or not okay, then you can say, look, I'm here for you, or I know of someone or an organization that can help, and they're free and confidential. Or let me know if you want to know that, and I can help connect you. Yeah. But just how are you doing? And just like listen for all the cues, because they might spat out, I'm fine, because they are trying to be fine. Or they might be burst into tears and go, I'm not fine. I never thought I would feel like this. And you may think, yep, because you were sold a lie, because no one talks about the side effects of a termination. So you want to be just open and empathetic. They don't need judgment. They're probably secretly judging themselves at the same time. So just loving, open, empathetic. Tell me how you're doing. Yeah. Because nothing's black and white in terms of decision making. One of the ways I learnt years ago to help someone process a termination is you can either see that it as a pyramid or a pie and go, okay, if, say the pie is 100%, if the government said that it was not legal, would you allocate, and you couldn't have done it, what % responsibility would you give them? I'd give them 5%. Okay. If your partner said to you, I will support you in this baby, I will step up and that, how would that have impacted you? What percentage responsibility in that pie chart would that have given? Would you give that? And they might go, oh, that would be like 50%. Okay, so 55%. And what if your parents had said, no, honey, it's fine. Stay, live here. We'll provide for you and your baby. We'll make sure you've got everything you need. It's a bump in the road, not an end. What? And they're like, oh, that would have been 35. Okay, so 10% of the responsibility comes back to you. And I can own that. I can own 10%. And that's not deflecting blame, but it's actually going, I am the one feeling 100% of the weight of responsibility here because I thought it was all on me. But if they actually break it down, there are a lot of factors that if had have shifted, she may have made a different choice. But at the same time, that whole weight that she's feeling that feels so overwhelming, can't breathe, can't get out of bed, don't know how I'm going to push past this or trust another man in another relationship or even do well at my job or even raise my kids properly, it's 15%.
Yeah.
And what do I do with that 15%? I can own that and I can learn to forgive myself and seek forgiveness for that. Yeah.
It's, you know, when I'm listening to you, the way that you explain that, it's funny because like we always, you know, even as kids, when we look at our parents, we think that they had it all worked out. Right?
Yeah.
And even in your own story, like, you know, it's like, oh, hang on a second. Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, and same thing for me, you know, when I finally, you know, when I got to speak to my dad and find out, you know, that how my parents met and, you know, my brother was a blessing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those things. Oh, okay.
It was a surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise.
You know, but like it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, yeah, you guys didn't have it worked out. You're still trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you understand that as you become like a teenager or a young adult, then you sort of can be a lot more forgiving towards your parents as well.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to do the best that they could have done.
Yeah.
With whatever they were given.
I tell my son that all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm just trying to work this out. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all you can do is you hope that your kids forgive you for it when you're flipping your lid all the time.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty forgiving, thankfully. Yeah.
So, where were we? We're still talking about faith here. Yeah. So, so you're on the plane, you get this text message and, you know, another friend. And so all of these signs, like I guess for you, when it comes to your relationship with God, how do you sort of approach it? And the reason why I ask this, so to give you some time to sort of put this into context, right? Like I always think each individual, it's an individual's journey, is how I would say it. So, you know, when I talk about it, it's not to like, I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to say, you know, you need to think this, you need to think that. But I've sort of reconciled where my head's at the moment, and you know I have a belief in God. The next question then is, you know, is Jesus God? That's a different question for me. And everybody's at different stages of that journey depending on where they're at. Some people, you know, haven't even started their quest to find out is there a God or not.
Yeah.
But for you, you know, how do you what is important to you when it comes to faith?
So all the things I think, you know, reading your Bible and get it. For me, Jesus is definitely God. I believe in a triune God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And I heard it described like God the Father says stuff to do, Jesus loves it, and the Holy Spirit puts it to work. And that resonates for me. And then and so my relationship is close with Jesus, and I believe that the Holy Spirit empowers me and anoints me to do what I need to do each day and guides me on the path. So it's pretty significant. It's pivotal. I mean, like, you can't do this it's 19 years this month.
Wow.
Without him. Yeah. You'll go crazy.
So
well, maybe I am.
have you ever had one of those catalyst type moments where, you know, you felt like you had an encounter with the Holy Spirit? Yeah.
Well, when I was 14.
14.
Yeah. So I went to, I think it was a Billy Graham revival concert thing in the entertainment centre, and I was full-blown attitudinal 14-year-old. And I said, God, if you're real, you speak to me, and if you're not. And I just couldn't stop crying. I was in the bathroom for 2 hours crying, this is so embarrassing. But I was like, I just knew he was real, and from that it was all different. Everything was different. Yeah, the sun was brighter, everything was different. And from there it's just been a personal relationship, and there's just like, he talks to me pretty much nearly every day, and if I listen more, probably more. But yeah, it's like really pivotal. I think that Holy Spirit, you know, that provides peace and direction, you know. Some people say, oh, I've heard a voice or I had an inkling or whatever, but it depends on your walk with the Lord, and that's for me been pivotal in like all our decision making. Yeah.
Did you find that, you know, you said the world was different, right? Like it's almost like a weight taken off your shoulders.
Absolutely, because as soon as you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, like, you're forgiven. Like, I know my eternity is secured, my future's in him, and all the debt, all my sins gone. That's it.
Yep.
So, and I am clothed in righteousness. And so when I stand before God, Jesus stands in front of me, and I'll be like, I did this. And I'll be like, no, Jesus has covered that. Yep.
Thank you.
I did this. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
You know, and because of his crazy love for me, it encourages me to do better and to do good, not for any other reason other than I just love him and want to please him. So it's a relationship. Like you do things to please your wife and her you, and you have this strong like unity. That's the same thing with your walk with the Lord. Yeah, I just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so I found it was one of those ones where it's I don't think you can really, like for me, and that's why I guess I'm so pro being a dad, right?
Yep.
Like I'm so in love with being a dad is because, like, to me that was like really understanding unconditional love,
Yep.
right? There's a comedian that actually has a really great bit about it. It's like, if there's one banana left in the house and your wife wants that banana, but you really want that banana, it's like, oh, I'm going to eat that banana, right? But if it's your kid that wants that banana, it's like, damn it, have the banana, kid.
Yep.
You know? Like that's the difference between loving your wife and loving your kids.
It's true. It's true. But it is. It's that like absolute obsess. I mean, if you think how much you love your kid, God loves you even more than that and loves your kids even more than that. It's crazy. And so
I think that's hard for people to comprehend.
it is. But I just go, well, what do you love most in the world? Well, that's how much God loves you, but more. Yeah. And that's why, because he died on a cross for us. Like, I can't even imagine he took everything, like, and died that kind of death. Like, you only do that for someone you're madly obsessed and in love with, you know, and that's us. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard it talking about a comedian. I'd heard this comedian the other day, and he said he used to be an atheist, but he goes, I went on a safari, and because we just did a safari at Christmas, and he goes, and I saw giraffes, and he goes, God had to have been like, there's no way. There must have been God going, I created it. Nah, I want a 9-foot neck. No, I want lashes that bling. Like, and I want like spots that are just everywhere and that just dazzle, go everywhere. And then, nope, longer neck, and I want a full foot purple tongue. Yep. And then you can just not really bend at the knees. You just have to kind of like strut and look down and go, yeah, you fat, to all the other animals. And I was like, yeah, it's like he's so creative and amazing. Giraffes are incredible. But I was like, he's like, I just think it's phenomenal. Like he created all that and still loves us best. And we're the ones that actually are the ones that he gave free choice to make all sorts of decisions contrary to what he would want for us, and still loves us anyway. Yeah.
Can I ask you this question? And the reason why it springs to mind is because Emma and I were talking about the concept of suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was something that she said that she still struggles with a little bit, why suffering exists.
Yeah.
And for me, I sort of think, suffering exists so that you can appreciate, some of the better things in life. Like if it's all the one color, to me, it's you can't just differentiate between the highs and lows.
Yeah.
And sadly, to experience extreme joy, there needs to be extreme sadness.
Yeah.
And Emma had a slightly different perspective on that. She sort of said, in the Garden of Eden, you could eat and enjoy food, but you didn't have to go hungry. And I was like, I have spent quite a bit of time thinking about it. I told her I would, and I'm still thinking about it because, I can understand that perspective, but I feel like, to really appreciate the joy of food, like when you're so hungry and you're hangry and you eat something that's delicious, you're just like, wow, right? Like it does add a different flavor to it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, when there's a lot of suffering in the world and there's a lot of these negative or bad things around, it truly makes us grateful for what we do have.
Yep, absolutely.
But do you have any thoughts around this?
I think there's two types of suffering. Like when you think about suffering, like when we go through heartache or grief or personal loss and what that does for us, there's lots of verses in the Bible and books that reflect that it actually draws us closer to God, and that it makes us we can identify with Jesus more, and it draws us closer into a deeper intimacy with him. It's not taught, it's not the favourite sermon at many churches, But then there's, looking out to the world and seeing the suffering out there and seeing, people hurting. And for me, like, my job is to pray for them. And I just see that as like a broken world. That's part of the fall. That's part of people choosing decisions away from Christ, and can God immediately put his finger down and fix everything? Absolutely. He doesn't. He gave us free choice, and I feel like you talked about at the beginning, there's like, action and consequences. So, and if we turn our back on God, there is natural consequences. I don't think he hates us. I don't think it's punishment or retribution. I think it is what happens when we remove ourselves from walking intimately with him and following his ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that the whole notion of hope, right? It's one of those things that is so powerful, because when you're in a desperate situation, and I've asked this of many people in podcasts and not in podcasts, but like when they've gone through a very tough time in their life, like I'll often ask people, out of curiosity, when you're going through this time, did you ever pray? And everybody's always like, yeah, like,
yeah.
I'm in the doldrums, like,
Yeah. Not to my lava lamp.
Yeah. I need something now.
Yeah.
Right? It was one of those ones. And it's kind of interesting, and this is sort of like, I guess, what informs my relationship, the way I sort of view a relationship with God is that I view, if you would have, take God as like this father figure, and you didn't talk to him for 20 years of your life, and then suddenly you really need him. So then it's like you call him up and say, hey, Dad, I'm in a really bad situation. I need $20,000, right? Your dad's probably going to go, what, why you're ringing me? Like, it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
But, he might turn around and say, well, tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
And let's try and work through this.
Yeah.
Right. And so then for me, that didn't really sit right with me. I was like, I don't want to be that son that only calls you when I need something. So then, if I'm going to live my life that way, then I need to make a conscious choice that, okay, well, I can't just be asking for things all the time. I was going to be, calling to, give the gratitude and the thanks for the things that I do have in life.
Well, I think, look, if you hadn't had a walk with the Lord and then all of a sudden you're in trouble and reach out to him in 20 years, like, the Bible's really clear about his mercies and grace. I wouldn't be surprised if he just gave you the 20 grand. Like, honestly, he loves you that much. But, he might know that if he gave you the 20 grand, you might blow it and it could do more damage. So sometimes he gives us more of what we need than what we want sometimes. Or his delay is delay and not denial.
Yeah.
That's been, I feel like, my road. It's always delay, not denial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think it is a relationship. If we look at God as not being up there, judgmental, looking down, but actually intimate in the room with us, then it becomes relational. And that's where I don't even think you worry about asking for the stuff, because just being in a relationship with Jesus, you just know in prayer, he's heard my needs. I trust him. I'll carry on. Yeah.
So when you've, needed the Lord for guidance, right? Like, obviously, you got pushed down this pathway to go and do these things. Were there times that you had, have you ever been angry at him? Because I think, when people go through negative times, there's two reactions. You can it either draws you close or it can push you away too.
Yeah. No, I've never been angry or pushed away. I've been disappointed. Like, God, I was sure that would come through, or I can't believe, like, I know you're the God of the 12th hour, but like, really? Just can we not be just the 10th for one time, just one? And being disappointed, not at God, but like what God has allowed. Like, because I know, like, he can do this. He can grant us, $1 million grant and kick us off for the next year or the next 5 years and make a difference. There's a lot of things. But again, what do you say? An overnight success occurs over 10 years. Yeah. So it's, and often, not angry, no, disappointed, but that's it. But yeah.
And that disappointment, like, how long did it take you to sort of get through that?
2 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's short-lived.
Oh, there's no point hanging on to it. It's not going to do any good. Yeah. And you know what I mean? Like, that's where perspective and looking at your blessings and being grateful for what has gone on, you know, because otherwise you just sit there. Like when I was running this and I had a small child, and I'm like, I really do need extra money because daycare is expensive, or I need someone to come alongside so I don't have to work as hard and parent as hard. So give me either a helper with my son or a helper with the organization, Lord, you know. But again, you don't get muscles by like not lifting weights.
Yeah.
So bit of resilience here, bit of push there. Yeah.
And you find that's helped you to carry through?
I think so, definitely. Like maybe not that particular example, but other things a lot more. Yeah. Because you have to, because we've had nearly every single opposition against us. We're still the best kept secret in Australia. Women know about abortion like they know about McDonald's, and yet they don't know that there's pregnancy centres available to them that can provide them free of charge everything they need to navigate that road.
So is there a centre like this in the other capital cities? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep. In most cities there are. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so did you have a hand in like establishing those as well?
No. One in Western Australia, you know, provided a bit of training and insight for us here. And then we've just got to know and looked at different models and tried, you know, you adjust and tweak like any business to try and go, okay, well, that's different for our demographic down here and we need to tweak to be according to that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. To switch gears a little bit, so I'm curious about how you navigated all this, you know, with a young child at that point in your life.
Yeah, on my hip.
Yeah?
Yep. Yeah. So, no, he just came along for the journey. He still does. School holidays, you will find him in here with an iPad and schoolwork. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
He knows. It's just part of the journey. We had an office in Kingswood years ago when he was an infant, and had this woman who'd had 2 kids removed from care and was pregnant again and considering termination. She didn't want to run the risk of losing her child to the foster care system again. And she asked to use the bathroom and she had to walk right past my son to get to it. And she comes out and swearing, and I'm like, oh no, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, that kid smiled at me. Now I've got to keep this pregnancy. so I'm like, oh, good job, Ben. She saved a baby. Good job. Yeah.
Funny.
So no, he's used to it now. Like, yeah.
And how do you like sort of feel like think your sort of faith and how do you pass that on to him? Do you think he's gonna feel the same Holy Spirit? Does he?
I pray so.
Yeah.
I pray he's stronger, better, faster, harder, tougher than me. Yeah. So particularly the world that he's growing up in. So, yep. So we, again, fundamentals. We go to church, you read your Bible, you pray, you know, every night. If there's nothing to pray for, you pray for someone. You pray for the world. You pray to thank God. And, you know, you acknowledge him, you know, thank him, and and you build your relationship with him like you would anyone else, because that's the first thing. And you read your Bible and you listen to the words that it says, you know, be of good courage, you know, you're brave, you know, you can do all things through greater is he that is in you than is in the world, you know. Be of good courage, like, because I want him to be brave and courageous, know that his strength and his hope and his courage is in the Lord. Yeah, not from me.
Yeah. So then when it came to your relationship with your partner.
Yes.
So how does faith sort of influence that?
Well, it was pivotal because we joked that he was a flirt to convert. So I was doing contract work for an organisation while starting this, and I just talk to people about God and, you know, just sow seeds of faith, and hopefully, Lord, I've sowed it, you can water it, I'm walking away, and if they think I'm crazy, who cares, I'll be gone in 2 weeks. And so I started that in this job with him, and then he just kept asking really crazy questions, and I was like, and then he goes, oh, do you want to go out to dinner? And I'm like, and if you come to church with me? And he goes, all right. And he was already kind of searching anyway. He'd grown up in the Salvation Army and had walked away when he was 18 anyway. So he did. He started coming to church with me, and we went out to dinner, and then he kept coming to church and kept coming to church, and a year and a half later we got engaged.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, and now like, our faith is pivotal to our family. So church is a high priority, Bible study, all that stuff. Yeah. In a very cool, non-weird way. Yeah.
And how does he feel about the work that you do?
He loves it. That was one of the things that shocked me. Even before he'd gone to church or anything, he goes, well, I guess if you've saved one baby, it's worth it. I was like, oh, who's this dude, So, yeah, he's totally supportive, unbelievable. I'd known him for a week and he took a day off work to help with a fundraiser at 6 a.m. in the morning. So, poor guy's been sold in since we met. Yeah.
To sort of go back to one of the concepts we were talking about, this concept of moral injury, when it comes to counselling these women, how do you sort of protect yourself from getting like too emotionally invested or,
It's not easy, It's like we actually genuinely care about these women. It's not transactional like your coffee shop or anything. And so when you see a woman that could make a decision that she is not going to come out the other end with in a positive way, it's really hard. But again, like she's not my daughter, she's God's daughter. So we just entrust her to him in that journey, Like we will give her all the information, we will champion her, support her, empower her, we will pull out all the stops to help her in any way she needs. But at the end of the day, she is free, like God has with all of us, given us free choice. We don't hold a gun to her head. We don't manipulate or cajole. She has free choice and we will just love her regardless. So, and that's our job and that's where it stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever come in and felt, I don't know what's the right way to put it, like put off or anything like that?
No. Oh, a guy.
A guy? Why was he in
One
here?
of the boyfriends of the girls, yeah. He was like really angry. He wanted her to have a really quick termination and she really wanted to slow down and go through everything and he was really mad. Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
See.
Well, that's about absorbing responsibility, right? Like,
yeah.
This when you view everything as a problem, then everything
That's right.
it always needs to be like there needs to be a solution.
Yeah.
But if you don't view it as a problem, you view it as an opportunity. Then it's like,
yeah,
well, you're going to seize that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So,
And no women's put off here because they are the first priority here, not the pregnancy, not anything else. Them. We want to know about them, what's going on for them. The fact that you're pregnant, side issue, talk to me about you, what's really happening for you, because it's all those side issues that are impacting this decision. Yeah. Because, yeah,
it's one of those ones because we always, and I think society's almost geared this way that we just look to sort of find that silver bullet, and we sort of get sold this dream that, you do this and like, miracle weight loss drug, you take this drug and, or this diet, you do this and you're trying to find a shortcut for everything.
Yeah. It's the land of comfort and convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough one because like there's no real, I think when you take away the consequences from the actions, then you all that happens is you just take riskier and riskier actions, or you do more stupid shit. Like that's typical of a male.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you could jump off a building and not get hurt, you do it.
Yeah.
Because it's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So no, but life's not kind of like that. So no one's put off. We're just, when someone walks in, we're about her, nothing else. Yeah.
And do you find that do people travel to get here? Like how far do they come from?
Interestingly, some of them, we have offices in Wollongong, Gosford, CBD, Gold Coast and here. So they often want close. And often it's either phone or Zoom simply because it's convenient or their lunch hour. But the real impact is the face-to-face because there's nothing like that, bouncing off like inflection and facial expression. Yeah, that connection. So we try and get them in as best we can. Yeah.
And it's often that when you have that opportunity to be face-to-face with someone and knowing that there's somebody that's on your side.
Yeah. That's completely it. We're on their side. Yeah. And so that's how we operate here and make sure that every woman feels really valued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, If people want to find you, what's the best way to find you guys?
Diamondwomen.com.au on our website, or on Instagram, Facebook as diamondwomenau, and I think we're also on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Okay.
All the things.
Yep. And when it comes to like if there's a business or something like that wants to assist, or like what sort of support would you guys love?
Honestly, partnerships are great, you know, where someone has a business that like 10% of our proceeds goes towards supporting vulnerable women facing an unplanned pregnancy, or, you know, make a donation at the end of our online checkout, or anything that really adds value, you know, like businesses that are prepared to, because often, I mean, like our biggest supporters are men, would you believe?
Really?
And I think, you know, so often we've looked at, you know, the Me Too movement and all that, but actually there's a lot of good men doing good things. And so, yeah, anything that really wants to say, look, we really come alongside, you know, a women's organisation that helps vulnerable women, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll put links in, obviously, the show notes, but is there anything else that you want to talk about?
No, that's all from us. But yes, we're tax deductible and very much in need of funds to fund our growth.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Jenny. And
Thank you, Johnny.
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Enjoy.